In the previous video, I went over how to create a variable distance buffer based on a buffer field. In this video, I will show you how to create a 6x6 inch map and export it as a PNG file at a resolution of 300 dpi. In ArcMap, you should always design your maps in Layout View. From the menu at the top, go to View, then Layout View. When you switch to Layout View for the first time, the Layout toolbar will appear floating above the map. To keep things neat, just dock the toolbar at the top. Before starting your map, it is important to make sure that the map layout is the exact size and shape you plan to use it for. By default, ArcMap uses the printer settings, which is typically a page size of 8.5 by 11 inches. Unless you plan to use the map at this size, it is a really bad habit to accept these layout defaults when designing your map. So for example, if you needed a small 6x6 inch map for a report and design the map using a layout of 8.5 by 11 inches, you would have to shrink the map down after the fact. Aside from annoying your professors, this makes your map hard to read. If you need a 6x6 inch map, design your map using a 6x6 inch layout. The point is to avoid resizing your map image later. In this example, I'm going to design my map using a 6x6 inch layout. The maps will be placed in a Microsoft Word document. The purpose of the maps will be to serve as a figure in a report or summary. They will show the map reader my final parcels and their relative location within Humboldt County. When changing the layout size, there are always two steps. You need to change the paper size, then you need to change the data frame size. The first step is to change the paper size. To do this, go to File, then Page and Print Setup. Uncheck the box next to Use Printer Paper Settings. Then change the width and the height. Now the paper size is 6 inches, but the data frame is still 8.5 by 11. Right-click on the data frame and select Properties. Then go to the Size and Position tab. Enter 6 for the width and the height. For the position, enter 0 for the X and the Y value. Click OK when you are ready. I'll be making two maps, a sitemap and a locator map. For the sitemap, I want to be zoomed in close. For the locator map, I want to be zoomed out far enough so that I can see the potential sites in relation to Humboldt County. Some students will want to use aerial imagery for the background. I'll load the one in the original folder to see what it looks like. The imagery is in a different spatial reference. Since I won't be using the image for any type of analysis, I will ignore the warning for now. Besides, this image looks quite horrible. I would never use something like this for a finished product. If you really want to use an aerial image for a background, I recommend that you navigate to the USGS Earth Explorer website and download NAPE imagery at the highest resolution you can find. In this instance, I'm going to download the NAPE GeoTIFF file. You might be tempted to use an Esri basemap as a background image. If you are a student at Humboldt State University, the use of Esri basemaps for submitting your final work is banned. We want our students to either design their own basemaps or use imagery that is in the public domain. Besides, data and maps from Esri is proprietary. When you use data that is in the public domain, there are generally no use limitations. After the NAPE GeoTIFF files are finished downloading, move them to your original folder and decompress them. Remember to remove the original compressed files. This saves space and avoids confusion later. In ArcMap, right-click on your original folder and select Refresh. The GeoTIFF files should appear. Remove the low-quality image from the table of contents and load your NAPE images. If you are asked if you want to build pyramids, the answer to this question is always yes. It looks like the footprint of the NAPE images will not cover my map extent. At this point, I have two choices. I can download a few more NAPE images to cover the gaps, or I can create two sitemaps. At this point, I think the image quality is good enough to create two sitemaps. I'll start by zooming in to the bottom group of parcels. I'll create a background for my map elements using the rectangle tool on the Draw toolbar. Right-click anywhere on the gray area on the top and activate the Draw toolbar. When you first open the Draw toolbar, it appears floating above the map. To keep things neat, just dock the toolbar at the bottom. Select the rectangle tool and draw a background area for your map elements. By default, the rectangle is yellow. You can change the color by right-clicking on the rectangle and opening the Properties window. Here you can change the fill and outline colors. You can also use the Size and Position tab to adjust the position on the map, as well as the width and the height. I'll insert a north arrow and adjust the color size. Next, I'll insert a scale bar. Adjust the color of the scale units to make them user-friendly. Always be sure that the number at the end of the scale bar is a round number that is easy for a map user to add together. I'll also add a map border. Open the data frame properties and navigate to the Frame tab. This is also where I changed the background color of the data frame to blue. I'll make my parcels hollow so that the map user can see the imagery underneath. Finally, I will insert a legend. I will only need to show the final candidate layer. Never use the word legend as a legend title. Either provide a descriptive legend title or leave it out. In this instance, no legend title is necessary. I will accept the defaults for the remainder of the legend options. I'll change the layer name to something more presentable. Notice that the legend updates when I do. I think my first sitemap is ready to export. To export the map, go to File, then Export Map. This is a place where students make mistakes. Don't rush the next few steps. Navigate to the folder where you want to save the map image. In this example, I'm saving it to my final folder. I'll call the file sitemap1. Change the file type to PNG. Always use at least 300 dpi for the resolution, otherwise your map may look fuzzy and pixelated. Your professors will dock points if your map looks blurry. When you are ready, click Save. Now if you open your final folder, you should see the image file. Before I move on to create the next sitemap, I will create a spatial bookmark. That way, if I need to come back to this to make any changes, everything will be placed exactly where I want. For the second sitemap, I will need to adjust the scale bar. I'll make it an even 400 yards. When you're ready, export the second sitemap and save it to your final folder. Don't forget to create a bookmark for the second map. For my locator map, I won't be using the imagery. Just in case I need to come back to my sitemaps, I'm going to save the map document. Then I'll use the Save As option to create a duplicate map document with a different name. Now I don't have to worry about deleting map elements and removing layers if I need to get back to my sitemaps. I'll turn on the Humboldt County boundary and remove the nape imagery. Once I have my map positioned the way I want, I'll use the rectangle tool to draw an extent indicator for the locator map. I'll change the final properties to a solid fill and a darker color that is easier to see. Next, I'll draw circular symbols for the city of Eureka and the city of Arcata. I'll use the text tool to add some labels for each. This helps to give the location of the properties within Humboldt County some context. I will also add a label for the Pacific Ocean. Finally, I will adjust my scale bar so that the units make more sense and are easy to use. When you are finished with your locator map, go ahead and export the locator map and save it to your final folder as a PNG with a resolution of 300 dpi.